All right, back to today's meeting between Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry and border czar Tom Homan after President Trump deployed Homan to the city.
President writing on Truth Social that the border czar will report directly to him. Joining us now is a journalist who has covered protests in Minnesota, covered these protests, in fact, the author of Fiery but Mostly Peaceful, Julio Rosas. Julio, great to have you back on the program. What will Tom Homan do differently on the ground in Minnesota?
Well, so it seems that they are going to prioritize going after what DHS has been repeatedly saying as the worst and the worst. Border Patrol has done in the past, not just in Minnesota, but in Los Angeles, Chicago, doing these massive sweeps in different areas, whereas ICE does targeted enforcement. So it remains to be seen if that's the only thing that they're going to do, because if you remember, President Trump campaigned on carrying out mass deportations, right? Not just going after illegal aliens who had criminal records here in the United States. So I think this is just a way for the president and Minneapolis to kind of have a little bit of a truce to kind of avoid what we've been seeing. But I think it'll be interesting. Tom's a great guy. I've known him for years. And he's very serious about the work. His passion for the job and the necessary requirements for the job are definitely not lacking.
So the latest New York Times Siena College poll, Julio, found that 61% of respondents feel like ICE has gone too far. But as Todd said, you've been on the ground, you've been embedded with these protesters. A lot of the attention is focused on ICE behavior. What can you tell us about the protesters and how they behave?
Well, they are very angry, and they've been angry for a very long time, right? What happened, a couple weeks ago, this didn't happen in a vacuum. A lot of people have been, spun up into a frenzy over carrying out mass deportations, over arresting illegal aliens. And so, with this change in leadership, my concern is that this isn't what the rioters want. They didn't want a change in leadership. They want ICE and CBP to leave the state entirely, which of course is a nonsensical demand. So because that is not going to happen, my concern is that we're going to continue seeing not just rioting outside of hotels, but also confrontations whenever they see federal agents out in the streets, which could lead to more deadly interactions. So we'll see what happens. I think once the weather turns warmer, it will encourage more turnout, especially in a place like Minneapolis. But it's not just Minneapolis, right? There's other hotspots that we saw across the country, whether Chicago or Los Angeles. So that's my concern, and I'm personally expecting to be pretty busy this year covering all these different types of protests or riots.
You mentioned the protesters are angry. You know what else they are? Funded. A lot of this comes from funding from outside sources. Kash Patel came out yesterday, said the FBI has actually pinpointed a lot of the funding sources of these protests. If that funding, Julio, gets shut off, do you expect, by and large, these attacks against ICE to end, and the only protesters that'll be out there is said soccer mom who comes out for an hour with the sign and then returns to her home? You're on the ground with these people. What do you think?
I don't necessarily think that's true, just because you have to remember a lot of the people that are out there, especially in sanctuary cities, they truly believe that the second Trump administration is like the worst thing ever, right? So I mean, you don't need to pay people to be out there. I think in terms of the material support, it would affect that, because it's more than just signs, right? I mean, people have been brought out there with homemade shields, and people are dropping off food and supplies and stuff like that. So it's more of their infrastructure that would be hurt. But again, people are really kind of have lost their minds over this issue. I mean, you have to remember, people thought that President Trump was gone after January 20th, 2021, right? So not only is he back in office, but he really is, trying to deliver on his campaign promises. So that has really angered people over the course of 8-10 years. So I think it would don't get me wrong, it would put a dent in their ability to operate. But what I've seen since 2020 to today is that when people are riled up over an issue, they'll be out there regardless.
Yeah, well, President Trump and Governor Walz both said that they had a productive conversation yesterday, and the president also said that they actually seem to be on similar wavelengths. So we, of course, don't know where this is going, but yesterday progress was certainly made. Author of Fiery but Mostly Peaceful, Julio Rosas, we thank you so much for joining us.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.